to another Little Bay Stampin' Technique video tutorial. This card is today's Christmas in July project on my blog, and I wanted to show you the technique I used to stamp these poinsettia flowers here. I made this card using a new stamp set called Watercolor Winter that will be in the Stampin' Up 2012 holiday catalog, which is released to customers on August 1st. So I used on this card a technique that I call watercolor rock and roll, and I'm going to show you today how I made this focal image portion. This is the large sort of label shape from the Apothecary Accents framelits, and I've gone ahead and die cut this out of watercolor paper. And as you can see in my finished card, we're going to be kind of stamping off the edges all the way around the label. So I'm going to just get a piece of scratch paper to put underneath of my die cut. For my technique today, I am using Calypso Coral and Real Red ink, and I'll go ahead and mount the solid poinsettia shape onto my acrylic block. There's one other thing you're going to need, and that is a Stampin' Spritzer. This is a great little spray bottle. It puts out a very, very fine mist of water, and it's awesome for all sorts of watercoloring techniques, and you can mix up some spray ink in here, either with water and re-inkers or with rubbing alcohol and re-inkers. These are really awesome, and I highly suggest that you pick some up. They're so versatile and they work really great. So you will need a Stampin' Spritzer or some sort of spray bottle for this technique. So a lot of you are probably familiar with the rock and roll technique, and that is where this technique kind of starts out. I'm taking the solid image of the poinsettia stamp, and I'm going to first ink that in my lightest color ink, which in this case is the Calypso Coral, and then I'm going to take my inked stamp and roll the edges of it into the darker color ink, which in this case is the Real Red. Now at this point, if you were to just go ahead and stamp this, that would be the rock and roll technique, and that would be really lovely. But I am going to make this into watercolor rock and roll by taking my Stampin' Spritzer, and I'm going to do this off camera so I don't get my whole work surface all wet. And I'm just going to spritz my stamp, I would say maybe 3 or 4 times, just until I notice the ink on the surface of the stamp start to sort of bead up and pool up and move around. Now I'm going to go ahead and stamp this down, and I want to really hold it onto my watercolor paper and make sure that it gets a chance. I'm pressing very firmly, and I want to hold it there until to give it the opportunity to soak into the watercolor paper a little bit. And then when you lift your stamp up, you want to do so very carefully, because if you're not careful when you're stamping down and lifting up, you can splatter the ink onto your project. And there you can see we got a really beautiful multicolor image that looks like it's been hand painted. So now at this point I would just go ahead and stamp my other poinsettias wherever I want them on my label shape. I want to just briefly show you how I stamped the leaf portion of my image. You can see that the leaves that are in this set are like evergreen needles, and I wanted to keep with the watercolor look overall, but I did not want to lose the definition of those individual needles. So I'm using Gumball Green, which is one of the new in colors for my leaves today, and I am going to ink this up, and now I'm going to, again, take it away from my desk just so I don't get everything all wet, and I'm only going to spray it maybe once or twice, probably twice at the most this time around. I don't want it quite as wet. Okay, and I can go ahead now and stamp this down and still hold it down for a couple extra seconds just to let it soak in. And there you can see I still have the definition. You can still see each of the individual needles, but it does soften up the image just a little bit to sort of maintain that watercolor look. So at this point, I would go ahead and let this dry. And then I would come back in with the outline portion of the poinsettia stamp. And I stamped that over top of my watercolored images in the Real Red ink. So I brought my finished card project back in because I want to give you one more quick tip. I don't know if you can see on the video, but this chocolate chip portion here, it looks like a layer behind the watercolor paper that we stamped on. It is, in fact, not a layer in that way. It's actually my card front, and then the pattern paper and the watercolor paper are adhered onto the card front. And so there's this negative space here that acts like a layer. Now, the reason that I had to do this is because I chose to use this die from Apothecary Accents. And unlike, for example, the Labels framelits, this is the only one in this shape. There aren't larger and smaller graduated dies in the same shape that you could just use for a quick and easy layer. So I just want to show you how I was able to achieve this, the look of this faux layer here. So here is my Designer Series paper, and this is from the Candlelight Christmas Designer Series paper pack. What I did was I cut my designer paper to be the size that I wanted on my card front, which in this case is 4 by 5 1/4. And then I took my Apothecary Accents framelit and I lined it up centered on my paper. Now you can see here, this goes to the very edges. So when I cut it out, I actually ended up with 2 pieces that I had to realign on my card front. So all I did was I lined this up, and then I just took a pencil and I traced around the outside, just around the outside edge like that, all around the framelit. And then I carefully cut on my pencil line. So then when I adhered these 2 pieces of designer paper onto my card front with an equal border on each side, it created this negative space in the middle that when I then added the stamped portion into the center of, ends up looking like a faux layer underneath. So again, here's my finished card project using the Watercolor Winter stamp set, the Candlelight Christmas Designer Series paper, and a few other items from the 2012 Stampin' Up! Holiday Catalog. To see a complete supply list, please visit my blog, and please make sure that you visit my Stampin' Up! Website on August 1st, when you will be able to see all of the wonderful new product from the 2012 Stampin' Up! Holiday Catalog. I will see you tomorrow for another day of my Christmas in July series. Thanks for joining me today, and happy stamping. Bye-bye.